Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Pastor. Hope you're having a good morning and hoping you're having your coffee. I always enjoy having a good cup of coffee to start the day. And we've been talking about the Tower of Babel. And the issue with the folks with the Tower of Babel is that they're not obeying God. God has told them, I want you to fill the earth. I want you to go and scatter, fill the earth, and do that. Well, they're trying to bring everybody in to live in the city in the same area. They've actually uncovered high-rise buildings, probably apartments from those days. I mean, they've dug those up in Ur, where Abram came from. So they're building these cities. They're building them out of bricks. They figured out how to build a city. But their goal is to make their name great. Now they're also building a huge big tower, a huge big building to be impressive. And this hangs on in this area. This is modern day Iraq area, where this would be Babylon. And remember that the word Babel and the word Babylon is the same word in Hebrew. But they wanted to build this big tower. We know in the day of Nebuchadnezzar that he built these huge big idols, and apparently he built a lot of images to himself. If y'all remember, back in the same area with Saddam Hussein, he was known for building huge big statues of himself around. He was a student of Nebuchadnezzar and the great Babylonian Empire. In fact, that was his desire to come back. I think sometimes we did not understand Saddam Hussein's goal. We thought he was a radical Islamist. He was not. Basically, his goal was to bring back the old Babylonian Empire. And it goes back literally to the Tower of Babel days. But they're doing this, and they're being quite successful, bringing people to live in the city, and they're all coming down there. They're building this great tower. The Lord's come down to see it. And in verse 6 of chapter 11, it says, the Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, which was his plan. And they stopped building the city. That is why they called it Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Well, God desired for humanity to spread out and to be all over the whole earth. Had they not taken that command seriously, our whole earth would not be filled today. And as I've mentioned before this week, we realize that in this pandemic we've been going through, that the places that have been hit the hardest are the places where the population's the densest. And New York's been hit real hard. Some places in California have been hit hard. The cities have been hit hard. And I'm not saying it hasn't affected the rural areas, but where there's great concentrations of people, it's been worse. And that would have been true back then. And of course, with no doctors, no medicines much, they would have been at the mercy of any disease, anything that happened, any disasters that would have happened. And it would have, our earth would not have been filled. I don't think it's a command not to live in cities. I don't think it's a warning against living in cities today, because truthfully the earth's been filled. And so, but back then it was. But their goal for doing things is they wanted to make themselves great. And so they had one language. God confuses their language where they can't communicate with one another. I think of what it was like before the days of Noah. God read their thoughts, and every thought and inclination was towards evil. But when you get people together and they start thinking together, they can accomplish about anything. It's when we're divided that we can't accomplish much. And so I think it's good, but they were going against God, and they were kind of all in one accord, and they were all strategizing, all planning, all doing these things that God did not want them to do. So God confuses their language where they can't understand each other, and they just, it stops. They go do what God had wanted them to do, and they scatter. I had a thought about that this week that kind of came to me. These are Nimrod's clans and some of his group that do this. But later on, hundreds of years later, Babylon is going to have a great empire. They're going to be the world's most powerful empire. If you remember right, Babylon's the one that conquers Judah. And there's the Babylonian exile, where they literally take all the people out of Israel, out of the Judah region, and then bring them to Babylon. And can you imagine all of those Jews back then would have known the story of the Tower of Babel? And can you, I just imagine they would have been comforted by the fact that even though they'd been conquered by the Babylonians, even though a lot of them had been exiled into Babylon, that they realized that to try and make your name great, which they were doing at that time, isn't going to last. It's just not going to last. And you have people like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego there. And Daniel never bought into the Babylonian Empire thing, even though he was a high official. He always served God first. And I think that's the thing that we have to realize where we live today. I believe we live in a great country. And but we have to understand, we put our trust in God and we serve Him, and we can be grateful for our country. But the greatness always comes from God. And with that said, I hope you have a great day. And we'll finish up, and I'll just have some finishing touches on Tower of Babel and maybe try and apply it a little bit to our lives tomorrow. And I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk with you tomorrow. Blessings upon you.